Welcome to Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate, episode 19. So pleased you can join me today. This is where I share all of the shenanigans around real estate that goes on that I have experienced through my almost 3 decades buying and selling real estate. If we've not met before, my name is Wendy Chamberlain. I am a buyer's agent, buyer's advocate here in Melbourne, Australia. We also have a selling advocate as well, and always having lots of fun dealing with people within the real estate industry. It is a very emotional time when it comes to somebody buying or selling a property. And that's what I like to share here in my Property Mama Adventures. I am thrilled to announce we now have a podcast. We've got the Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate podcast has launched. So if you want to start listening to our podcast, you can head to propertymama.com.au/podcast, and you'll be able to access the podcast in whatever your favorite streaming platform is. So today I wanted to talk about another segment of the real estate industry that I haven't yet covered. We've talked about people selling houses, we've talked about people buying houses, and we've talked a lot about real estate agents. What we haven't spoken about is renters, tenants, the people that are living in the properties that they may not own the particular property, but they rent it from their landlord or from their rental provider. And so it's a very interesting time at the moment that we are seeing. Certainly here in Melbourne, there is a rental crisis. And what we are seeing is that there are more people needing to rent homes than there are homes for rent. So we have a housing shortage right now. And what that means is that there is quite a bit of competition for people to find a home to live in. Now, there are many different reasons why someone may rent. And I did talk about renting in my last episode of Property Mama when I said about how renters are treated and how I have seen renters being treated, and we ourselves have rented before. And certainly, as a generalisation, the industry does need to lift its game in relation to how renters are treated in some circumstances. But let's put the shoe on the other foot and talk about situations where we've had difficult tenants, tenants that have caused problems for the owners of the property, for the landlord, and even, in fact, we've had some experiences with renters ourselves where they have been difficult. So with the rental crisis right now, what I definitely am seeing in relation to working with clients looking to buy properties, or even working with clients looking to sell the properties that are rented at the moment, is there is quite a bit of pushback out there in the market right now from people that are renting, because they know that there is a strong possibility that they're going to lose the house they're living in. And unfortunately, that is the nature of when you don't own the home that you're living in and you're renting it from someone else. They will have their circumstances under which they are choosing to rent their property. And when those circumstances change, that's when they may require the house to be brought back to them, and they may want that house to be vacant, which means that the renter will be given a notice to vacate, or they may even just be moving out, coming to the end of their tenancy, end of their lease, and move out. And then the person that owns the property may be choosing to do whatever they want with that property. That may be putting it on the market to get it sold. It may be looking to put the rent up because the rental rents have increased over the time where the person has been living in the property. So certainly here in Melbourne, in Victoria, and across many states in Australia, when somebody rents a property, you can rent a property under a fixed term lease, and that is for a number of months. That the most common one is for 12 months, can be shorter, can be longer. And then once that fixed term tenancy is up at the end of it, it's not uncommon for the tenant to continue on living in the property on a month-to-month basis. So when someone is in a fixed lease tenancy, certainly here you can't ask them to vacate until the end of the tenancy. But once someone is on a month-to-month, with the sufficient notice period, and here in Victoria it is 65 days notice to vacate, you can ask someone to vacate your property. And we are seeing pushback. We're seeing a lot of pushback from tenants because with a rental crisis going on at the same time and not enough properties around for people to move into, they literally may not have somewhere to go. And I was talking to a real estate agent recently, and the woman that was renting the property was in tears because she knew the property was coming up for sale and she knew she had to move on because they were going to give her notice to vacate. And she said, I've been looking for 10 months. I can't find anything. And add into the mix there is the cost it might now be for a tenant to move in to another property. If rents have gone up because it's basic supply and demand, where there aren't as many rental tenancies around available, then the price is going to go up. And so I am hearing of people needing to move into share houses, and even just renting a room in a share house might be costing them $250, $300, $350 a week, which is a lot of money for people when you've got everything else going on at the moment with the cost of living. And so when we are looking to inspect properties for clients that are looking to buy them, sometimes we're getting pushback from the renters not wanting the agent to come through, not being accommodating, being difficult about getting having times available for our clients to go through and look at the properties. And we're seeing it more and more. We recently purchased a property off market for a client, which means it wasn't advertised. We found out about it through our relationship with that particular real estate agent, and we were the only buyer that was shown this property. My client looked at it, they loved it, and so we bought it, which is fantastic. However, it is rented by the renter, and she has been difficult to pin down for times to get through the property. Even initially when we were looking at this home, well, the agent had told me about the home and he described it. We didn't have any photos. That's the nature often of an off-market opportunity. There may not be photos. There may not be a floor plan. There generally isn't a floor plan. But the agent can describe it, and from that we can work out whether or not it fits our client's criteria. And if it does, we obviously want to get through the property and have a look at it. And this tenant was difficult. It probably took us at least 2.5, 3 weeks to get through the property because she just was ducking and weaving regarding times when we might be able to get through. And we were able to get through. Like I said, our client loved the property, got it under contract. We're now waiting to settle. We want to get back into the property to do some measuring up. So my client is a first-home buyer. He wants to measure the spaces so that he can buy the furniture, because he's been obviously first-home buyer. He's been renting, and he doesn't have any, by his own expression, he doesn't have any fabulous furniture. He's just had sort of second-hand furniture as rentals, and he wants to go and buy some nice furniture for his first home. And we're just trying to organise the time to get through the property. And again, she's being difficult. So we are seeing it quite a bit. I'm seeing pushback quite a lot. And even in speaking to some real estate agents right now, they're even talking about not taking on homes for sale that have tenancies in place, because it can be difficult to get access to the property. And look, we're not trying to make anybody's life difficult. We're just trying to do what we're here to do, which is to buy and sell real estate. But that's just the nature of it. And I can understand it, because it's their home and it can be emotional. Now, we are respectful of their home, of making adequate time in advance to come through the home, but like 2.5 weeks not being available, that, in my opinion, is not fairly reasonable. So I remember one of our own properties that we rented. We've since sold it a long time ago. We had purchased a property as an investment, and it was actually a block of flats. There was 4 flats, and there was one particular flat that the tenants were always problem children, and the rental manager was managing this particular property, and came time to the end of the lease. So because they'd been a difficult tenant, they'd been late on their rent constantly, we made the decision that we would ask them to leave and we would secure another renter. Well, so they did leave. When the rental manager went to the property, and this was a property in the country, in Queensland, when they went to look at the property, there was stuff everywhere. I mean, they'd left their stuff all around the property. But one of the things that just still makes me to this day scratch my head is they had thrown out the kitchen drawer. So, you walk into a kitchen and you've got the cutlery drawers, and is it always the third drawer that's got the tea towels in it? I don't know. It seems to be a thing that the third drawer down has the tea towels. They just threw the drawer out, and I don't know why. It seems like an odd thing to do, but this is the kind of things that some tenants just decide to do. So we had to get it replaced. So it's just interesting how some tenants choose to behave. Another tenant that we're dealing with at the moment for one of our selling clients, she has decided to put the property on the market, and she gave the tenants notice to vacate. Now, the tenants were in on a month-to-month, and she had been self-managing the property. So she wasn't using a professional property manager. She had decided to self-manage the property, which is her prerogative to do. However, she put these tenants in that they were known to her through family or friends, put them into her property on a lower rate, on a rental that was probably about $150 a week less than what market rent would be. So on a super low rent, self-managed, month to month, and not in a long agreement. And then she had a change of circumstance. My client had a change of circumstance, and she needed to sell the property. So the tenants had been living in the property for a couple of months by this point. Not a problem. Not a single thing wrong with the property. She issued notice to vacate on these tenants, and they refused to leave. Under the law, they're required to leave, but they decided that they didn't want to leave and they weren't going to leave. Then all of a sudden, they started talking about all of these problems in the property, that the shower was leaking and this door was broken and this handle, and it was just one thing after another. It was going on and on and on. And these tenants actually took my client to VCAT, which is the tribunal that you take landlords and tenants go to when they've got disputes that they're looking to get resolved here in Victoria. So I went to VCAT. So my client's trying to get the tenant to vacate, which she is perfectly within her rights to do, and had issued the proper notifications to do this. But as soon as that was done, they decided there was all these problems with the property, and they have taken my client to VCAT. So it's gone into a VCAT hearing, and this went on for months and months and months. And they claimed they didn't have anywhere else to go. Now, whether or not that's the case, I don't think it was, but it's not my decision at the end of the day about that. And so they pleaded their case to the member at VCAT, and the member ruled in the tenant's favour to say that they could stay living in this particular property. So it's an interesting turn of events, how things are evolving, that the rights of a tenant can supersede the person that actually owns the property and has circumstances that are requiring them to need to sell the property. But they can't sell the property because they've got this tenant in place. And so this has gone on for over 12 months. And my client also took them to VCAT to try and get the notice to get them out of the property. And they refused to do it. So they are still in the property. They have agreed to pay closer to what the market rent is, and the property will be going on the market. But the challenge that we have is that I don't know, given the way that this tenant has behaved, do we trust that they're going to cooperate with a sale? And a sale involves people having the home open for inspection at least once a week, generally twice a week, and having people come through and have a look at the property, and the property being kept in a decent condition, a clean and neat condition. And given how they have behaved the whole way, it's not really something that I would trust them to do, because I know of circumstances where a property is for sale or for rent and it's got a tenant in place and it's the day of an open for inspection and they say, no, sorry, no one can come in. We're unwell, so you can't come in. And if they were to pull that kind of behaviour, which I would not put past them given on what their track record is, it may well be the case. So let's wait and see what happens there. But it's very, very interesting that where people are living in properties they don't own, that there is this absolute sense of entitlement that I certainly am seeing across a number of things within real estate. And here in Victoria, there have been lots of changes with rentals and rental providers, which used to be called landlords. That was one of the changes. You're not called a landlord anymore. You're called a rental provider. You're not called a tenant anymore. You're called a renter. So it's renters and rental providers versus tenants and landlords. I mean, it's, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's still a duck, isn't it? It doesn't matter what you call it. But they're the changes some of the changes that they've made. They started a lot of these changes a couple of years ago, and they continue to bring in these changes, which are just causing headaches and expenses for the rental providers, to the point that we're at a point here now that many landlords, rental providers, are choosing to sell up, because the end of the day, owning real estate where you rent it out, it is an investment. It is an investment where you're looking to make an income from it. And if the expenses are at such a point that it's so expensive to own the property and the income coming in doesn't negate that, or it's not worth your hassle to hold the property, and that's what we're seeing, then the rental providers are selling the properties. Now, the most recent changes that I've seen proposed here in Victoria are relating to energy efficiency in homes, to the point of they're saying that by October of 2025, next year, that you have to provide heating in the properties, cooling in the properties. Now, to this point, there hasn't needed to be cooling in properties, so that's an expense in itself. There's insulation needing to be put into properties, all properties being draft proofed, and little clips put on the cords of window blinds. There's a whole bunch of things that they're making the landlords implement. And the government, and I've looked at their stats, and the government has said that these changes are not going to cost any rental provider more than, I think it's $5,500. Yeah, you tell me how any of those things, if they're not already in place, you're going to get all those things done at the moment with the cost of materials and getting trades for that kind of money. Now, it's all broken down on their website, and I had a look at the breakdowns of the things, and they're talking about energy efficient hot water systems as well. And so it costed $45 to get all the little blind clips fixed up in your house. How many trades are going to come and do all of that plus materials for $45? That's just not going to happen. And the hot water services. Now, an instantaneous hot water service is going to cost you at least $1,500, probably more, plus installation. I think they had the costing there at $436. So it's just pie in the sky stuff in relation to the costings. And there is going to be an expectation that all the landlords do it. So I'm mentioning this because this is just the latest thing, that they are basically mandating that the rental providers provide. So here's my question about that. And they're saying it's for energy efficiency and it's for preventing mold and all kinds of things for the renters. And that's fabulous. But what about people that own their own home? Is the government going to help them to have their homes draft proofed and not have any issues with mold and so forth? What about older homes? One of the properties that we own is over 100 years old, and you expect us to go in and draft proof that entire property? It's getting out of control, and it is 100% exacerbating the rental crisis, because we already have a shortage of houses for rent. And then when you are making things so unattractive, unaffordable for a property investor, who is the landlord, the rental provider, to provide that accommodation, this is on top of land tax that's all gone up recently. And those costs are going to get passed along to the renter, to the tenant. They have to, because otherwise many landlords, many rental providers are getting themselves into a position where they actually can't afford to hold the properties. They don't pass on the costs of owning the properties, they can't afford to hold them. And I think there's an angst factor that if people think too hard, the gross rental yield right now for a house in Melbourne is 3.6%. If you can get over 5% for your money in the bank, why would you bother with all of the headaches and all the angst and the hoops and everything you've got to jump through, where you can far more easily do other things with your money? So that's what we're seeing it. So it's interesting how the renters approach the situation. So I can see why when a property is being sold, they don't want you to access it, because they know, given there's no other homes to move into, or they may not easily be able to find something because they're competing with 30, 40, 50 other groups that may wish to rent the same property. So it's tough out there. So recently we sold a property for a client, and he wanted to get the property sold, and there was a tenant in place. So one of the ways to get a tenant on board with perhaps moving out earlier is to incentivize them and offer them things to encourage them to move. Now, sometimes this might be give them a month's free rent and they may move out early. Sometimes it can be offered to help them with moving costs. So the agent was having a conversation with the renter, because our client wanted to get the property sold for whatever their circumstances were, and they were prepared to give some incentives to the renter. So the agent had it in hand. He was talking to the renters about the situation, that the property was on the market, it was going to be sold, and would they be open to moving out earlier, which they were, and that conversation was going in the right direction. Now, my client wanted to contact the renter directly, and I said, that's not a good idea to step in and get involved, because there's a bit more emotion there without the third party being in the middle. And he was adamant that he wanted to speak to the renter. So I said, okay. So I gave him the renter's details, and he contacted the renter. Now, next thing, he rings me and says, okay, they're moving out. And I said, okay, what did you say to them? And he said, he said, I need you to move out of the property because I need to sell the property. And he shared a bit about his circumstances. Unfortunately, that then puts the power on the side of the renter, because in what he shared as to his reasons why he wanted to sell the property, they realized that he really needed to sell the property. And so they went, right, we're in the box seat here. We can take some advantage. Now, in my opinion, I think they took advantage, and they wanted more than just what would be normally one month's rent. They wanted several months' rent paid for them to leave the property, and they were concerned about finding another property. And my client had another home nearby that he offered to them that they could move into at a similar kind of rental. They could move there until they found somewhere else, because these renters were actually in the process of thinking about buying another property. So that's what they were gearing up for. And so just as a short term, he had another property they could rent that would be suitable. And they turned around and said, no, that doesn't suit. It's not quite in the right area for us. But if you give us another month's rent, we will leave, and we want you to pay our moving costs, and we want you to pay to clean the property. on top of all these months' rent, to move out of the home. And he agreed to it because he wanted them out of the property, and he had shown his hand that he wanted the property sold. So that was against the better judgment of myself. I said not to ring them. He did. The real estate agent had it in hand, but he stepped in where he should not have done and spoke to them. And then they realised that they could take advantage, and they did. So interestingly, when they sent their invoice through for moving, they just happened to sneakily include in their costs of packing up the property. Now, up until that point, I hadn't got involved speaking to them. It was all being managed by the real estate agent. I would talk to my client, and I would talk to the agent, and the agent was talking to the renters, except with my client went directly to the renters, which tip, don't do that. Get a third party to do that. So I got involved at this point, and I said very politely, I said, listen, we have been more than accommodating with you, but for you to then expect us to pay your packing costs as well as the moving costs, I think you are now having a lend, and I don't think that's appropriate. I actually think that's really, really rude, because we have been very accommodating for what you've asked for. So we won't be paying the packing costs. And the reply back was, oh, no, that shouldn't have been on there. That was a mistake. Oh, look, they were supposed to take that off the invoice. You shouldn't have received that. Do I believe them? No, I don't believe them for one moment. I think if that we had paid that invoice as it was, including the packing costs, they would have said, oh, look, we got more out of them. Look at that. No, they were told, no, enough is enough. Enough is enough. You're not taking advantage of our client. We won't be paying that. And yes, it was a mistake apparently. So it wasn't paid. But there you go. Dealing with tenants, with renters, is an adventure in itself, I've got to say. And if this is something that you're not comfortable to do, as in dealing with somebody that might be living in a property that you need to sell your property, or if you're looking to buy a property, Chamberlain Property Advocates, we manage this process for you. We work with lots of home buyers, but we also will manage a sale for you. That if you don't want to get involved, you saw what happened when he did get involved. So we are that independent third party that can help you navigate the waters of real estate. Certainly when it comes to buying, we work with a lot of first home buyers. We work with a lot of clients who have not purchased for a long time. We work with clients that are moving from interstate, coming to live in Victoria. So they're big moves. First home buyers haven't done it before. They don't know what they're doing. And I say smart people, they've just never done it before. And so we do this every single day. So I know exactly the steps that are involved to get a property, to find properties. We find off-market opportunities all the time. And we do that because of our relationships with the real estate agents. And the real estate agents know that our clients are serious. We have a qualified client that we're working with, and we know the due diligence steps that need to happen. We know the order and the speed in which they need to happen. And when working with us, it actually makes things far easier for the real estate agent. And that's why agents love to work with us as a buyer's advocate representing our client, because we know the process, and we are there to protect our client, because not all real estate agents are the same. We work with, and I love working with, great real estate agents. They're really, really good at what they do. But unfortunately, the real estate industry has enough bad apples in the barrel that it has tainted people's experiences. And it's I hear it all the time from clients that they are frustrated, they don't trust agents, and they don't know if they're telling the truth. Often, certainly here in Melbourne, underquoting is a massive, massive issue, where properties are advertised for a price which is well below where they genuinely would sell or where they end up selling. And then you've got adding auctions into the mix there. It can be a minefield when you're venturing into these waters to find a property, to purchase your dream home. And that's where we can help. So do reach out across our social channels or head to our website, which is chamberlainadvocates.com.au. We have been doing this for a very long time. We are very skilled in searching for the properties that are going to fit your criteria and securing your dream home. We often have people come to us who become clients after they have been looking for homes for many months, even years. Years. Gosh, whenever someone says they've been looking for properties for years, I think, oh my gosh, you've ridden how many markets where you could have bought where markets were properties were lower priced and now the market is up. But whenever they're ready, they come forward, and that's who we love to work with. So if that's you, or if you know someone that is struggling, they've been missing their finance pre-approval is about to expire, or you've renewed it a couple of times and you still haven't been able to secure that home, you can't find the property, please get in touch, because we do have access to homes that you're just not going to see. It's quite plain and simple. They won't be advertised. You won't see them. We get them through our networks with real estate agents. So please do reach out. We have our Property Mama episodes each week where you can connect. And as I said, we now have the podcast as well. So that's available on your favourite streaming platform. Go to propertymama.com.au and you can see where you can download the podcast and listen in to the latest adventures in real estate, which I just love sharing with you, because I always have lots of stories to share. I'm always talking to people and hearing all about the bits and bobs and then my own personal experiences of what I see in the real estate industry. It certainly is something that makes me laugh, not always in a good way. Because your lips were moving. Did you mean to say that? Oh, okay, right. Well, that's it for now. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate. We're available on your favourite social channel. Reach out, give us a like, give us a comment. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover in a future episode, please just get in touch with us and we'll have a chat and look at covering that for you. Any burning questions, happy to help. And thanks for tuning in, and bye for now.